Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. A long time ago, I read a quote that was attributed at that time to Mark Twain. And a few months ago, I read the same quote, and there were some fact checkers who said that actually Mark Twain never quoted that, never said that. And I said, well, that's interesting. And let me paraphrase the quote. And it's about democracy. It goes something like this. If democracy will be real in democratic countries, then do you think these guys will let us vote? Something like that. And it doesn't really matter if Mark Twain said it or whomever said it. I think it's a valid, question, rhetorical question. Why did I mention this quote? Is because that's exactly what happened in France. In France, if you are aware, there was the so-called pension reform, and still is a fight over there against the pension reform that actually was voted, actually not voted, that's the problem. It was just supposed to be voted by the elected representatives of the French nation. But one day before that was supposed to be, I think one day before it was supposed to be voted upon, the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, took it and signed it into law. He didn't do anything illegal, but he decided something that the elected officials, the representatives of the nation, were supposed to do. That was their job. That pension reform would raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. I saw an opinion poll from France about this issue, and I think it was 80% against this so-called reform. So basically against raising from 62 to 64, the retirement age. But anyway, Macron did not do anything illegal. The problem is one person decides something for the whole nation without going through the, let's say, steps that were kind of required. He didn't do anything illegal. Now, I think the process after he signed it was he was supposed to be contested by 2/3 of the French Parliament, I think, and then they would have gone for a vote in the Parliament. And then, if that didn't occur, which it didn't, the law signed by Mr. Macron, this reform, was supposed to go to the constitutional court or something like this. That was the final determinant if that would be they would agree with the process, and that means that Macron his signature is valid and will become law, or might be a referendum on the issue. I am all for referenda. I want referenda as many as possible. Why? Because it's the direct expression of the will of the people. So when you hear about democracy in France, and not only, is democracy as long as it fits their interest and other interests, other special interests, let's put it this way, through the elected officials. So everything on the surface looks, we elect people, and people, those elected officials or representatives, they will work in our behalf. Well, not so fast, Gigi. Actually, those guys are over there, but then once they get over there, they really do not, they are, okay, and they push that. That's a clear example here. Now, in a democracy, or in a democratic system, not a democracy, because I think France is a republic, so it's in a system where democracy is used, the will of the people, of the majority, should rule without infringing individual rights. That's very important, because otherwise, if we decide to take the wealth of all people with blue eyes, and we have brown eyes, and we're a majority, we will do that. But that would infringe your rights, individual rights, human rights, and so on. So what happened here? The French Constitutional Council rejects the second request for a referendum on pension reform. So let me show you this article from France. Actually, it's from the Russians, who are happy to report it. And as the French Constitutional Council rejects second request for referendum on pension reform. So that means These guys, a few guys, it's a council made of a few guys, few people, they decide that they would not allow the will of the people to be heard by, putting this in front of the nation to be voted upon, which is something that would affect the nation. Is not something like, I don't know what bathroom I can use or something. And instead they just go ahead with what one person, which is Emmanuel Macron, decided to sign. Now you tell me what's going on over there. Never, I don't want to hear ever again anybody telling me about democracy in France and all that. Alright, the French Constitutional Council said on Wednesday that it has rejected lawmakers' second request for a referendum on President Emmanuel Macron's controversial pension reform. So a few people, these guys, I don't think these are elected, the Constitutional Council. I don't know if they would be, appointed by someone, like would be here in the, justice, how do you call it, the Supreme Court in the United States. I don't know if it's the same thing. Let me see what these guys are clarifying here. The request for a public vote on the reform, which would raise the retirement age from 62 to 64, was submitted by 253 left-wing opposition lawmakers. It doesn't matter if they're left-wing or right-wing. The bill submitted for the consideration does not represent a reform related to the social policy of the nation. The statement by the Constitutional Council reads, what? The bill submitted for consideration does not represent a reform relating to the social policy of the nation. Weasel talk. Meanwhile, the police prefecture of Paris has announced a ban on unauthorized demonstrations from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. local time in front of the Palais Royal, where the Constitutional Council is housed. So you can't even go and protest if they don't authorize. Do you think they will authorize demonstrations? Why do you think they placed a ban until they authorized? From 5 p.m. when people get out of work until 2 a.m. well, probably they go to sleep. How about, and people are, it's unbelievable. So freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, no, that's not, all right? The opposition, however, intends to continue pushing back against the reform. On June 8, the National Assembly, the lower house of the French Parliament, will review a draft legislation on the repeal of the pension reform submitted by the Liberties, Overseas and Territories LIOT opposition parliamentary group. On April 14, the French Constitutional Council approved the key article of the pension reform bill, which would gradually raise the age of retirement in France from 62 to 64 years by 2030. It turned down the first request for a referendum on the grounds that the application did not meet the required criteria and was submitted out of term, so technicality. The reform sparked a strong backlash, prompting people to take to the streets across the country, as many of 30 nationwide demonstrations against the reform have taken place already, with several protests organized by unions attracting over 1 million supporters across France. Trade unions have called for a 14th day of nationwide protest on June 6. So, why are they afraid? Besides, if they know better than the rubble, which they should, my next question is, who got them in this situation that they need to raise from 62 to 64? Wasn't it they who up in the first place? And now they drop the responsibility and the heavy load to the people that have nothing to do with it. Because of the economic policies and regulations and other BS that those guys that right now are shackling these guys from 62 to 64, they have no problem. These guys have a problem. And by the way, if you think this is the big, I don't say big lie, not big lie, but big cheat. These guys tell us, well, you know how we're going to punish them? The elected officials. by voting them out of the office. And then that's how you punish. No, I don't want to do that. I'll tell you why. Because those guys and the other guys that are going to come and replace them will have the same masters. You don't believe me? Why don't you look at the American democratic system and all that and see who's behind who? Anyway, these guys just play ball here, okay? They just play ball and they pretend that we defend your rights, but they always lose. Somehow the Republicans, the opposite, I think it's the Democrats are in charge, and that's the trend. The Democrats and the Republicans here in the United States play ball. They just feel like they pretend that they are fighting for a different view of the society. There's no different view up there. It's only one. You want to know how? Look what happened with issues, with serious issues, and you show me the opposition coming from the Republican Party. They always, not always, most of the time they lose. Even when they have the power, they also lose. You want to know when? Look when Trump was president. They had at one point, they could change things. They didn't. Once these guys came to power, they did stuff. They did stuff. So don't ever tell me about democracy, and especially the Western kind of democracy, or whatever it turned into, okay? Because there's too much. I'm not fond of this kind of mass democracy anyway, because they allow each and every biped, regardless how much that person knows on the issue, vote. And that's not right. Why is not right? Because a person who doesn't know anything about an issue should not be able to vote on that. Because he doesn't know anything. He just destroys something. You don't know anything about it, don't talk about it. Remember that little rule? If you don't know anything about it, don't talk about it. Because you just make a fool of yourself. In this case, it's very serious business, as Jeb Bush told Trump. This is a very serious business, the politics. And Trump is like, yeah. Or whatever. The same here. Very serious business. So that's one. But they try to make us, quarrel between or among us here, when they have other little masters over there in the security state and apparatus with all the big military industrial complex, intelligence community, and many more, banking system, and big corporations. I might add them, a few of them, not many, energy and pharmaceutical. Yeah, maybe this video is not going to pass the YouTube minimum requirements for being uploaded. We'll see. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.